Chapter 14. The meaning of the horns. With regard to the ram, Daniel sees two horns.
Then I lifted my eyes and saw, and there, standing beside the river, was a ram which had two horns, and the two horns were high. But one was higher than the other, and the higher one came up last. Daniel 8, verse 3.
A horn in Bible prophecy represents a king, as well as the power or strength of the king.
The adversaries of the Lord shall be broken to pieces. Out of heaven shall he thunder upon them. The Lord shall judge the ends of the earth, and he shall give strength unto his king, and exalt the horn of his anointed. 1 Samuel 2 verse 10. KJV. The Lord is my rock, and my fortress, and my deliverer, my God, my strength, in whom I will trust, my buckler, and the horn of my salvation, and my high tower. Psalm 18 verse 2. KJV. And the male goat is the kingdom of Greece. The large horn that is between its eyes is the first king. Daniel 8 verse 21. NKJV.
Samuel filled a horn with oil to use to anoint David as king. The horn is the source of power from which the Spirit of God is poured onto the king. It is also fitting that the emergence of a new king should be created through the use of a horn, being a representation of the king himself.
And the Lord said unto Samuel, How long wilt thou mourn for Saul, seeing I have rejected him from reigning over Israel? Fill thine horn with oil, and go. I will send thee to Jesse the Bethlehemite, for I have provided me a king among his sons. 1 Samuel 16 verse 1. KJV.
We might consider the two horns of the ram representing the divine pattern form of government in heaven. The Father is the source, and he poured his Spirit upon his Son, who grew to be the brightness of his Father's glory, and thus grew higher than the first horn.
Therefore God also has highly exalted him, and given him the name which is above every name, that at the name of Jesus every knee should bow, of those in heaven, and of those on earth, and of those under the earth, and that every tongue should confess that Jesus Christ is Lord, to the glory of God the Father. Philippians 2, verses 9 to 11.
Satan, the one most honoured next to Christ, was a murderer from the beginning. As the goat is described as being enraged at the ram, see Daniel 8 verse 6, so Satan was enraged at the Son of God. The enmity of Satan against Christ is manifested in the work of the goat against the ram.
By the abundance of your trading, you became filled with violence within, and you sinned. Therefore I cast you as a profane thing out of the mountain of God, and I destroyed you, O covering cherub, from the midst of the fiery stones. Ezekiel 28 verse 16.
The power of Satan is in his lies. These are the only things originating from him. Everything else has been given to him by God. This is further confirmed by the connection of the lifting up of the wicked through the process of speaking.
I said to the boastful, Do not deal boastfully. And to the wicked, Do not lift up the horn. Do not lift up your horn on high. Do not speak with a stiff neck. Psalm 75 verses 4 and 5, NKJV.
The words or lies by Satan gave him power.
The coming of the lawless one is according to the working of Satan, with all power, signs, and lying wonders. 2 Thessalonians 2 verse 9.
The goat had a notable horn between his eyes.
And as I was considering, suddenly a male goat came from the west, across the surface of the whole earth, without touching the ground, and the goat had a notable horn between his eyes. Daniel 8 verse 5.
This horn between the eyes of the goat represents Satan and the lie he told concerning the identity of the Son of God, and the power of this lie resides in the fact that others believed these lies.
Angels were expelled from heaven because they would not work in harmony with God. They fell from their high estate because they wanted to be exalted. They had come to exalt themselves, and they forgot that their beauty of person and of character came from the Lord Jesus. This fact the fallen angels would obscure, that Christ was the only begotten Son of God, and they came to consider that they were not to consult Christ. This Day with God, page 128.2.
The goat ran at the ram and struck it with his sharp horn. The power in this notable horn contained 4 other lies, which were not visible until the first lie was exposed, because after the notable horn was broken off, the 4 other horns grew out of the same place as the first horn.
Therefore the male goat grew very great, but when he became strong, the large horn was broken, and in place of it 4 notable ones came up toward the 4 winds of heaven. Daniel 8, verse 8, NKJV.
By obscuring the fact that Jesus was the begotten Son, the precious divine pattern relationship between Father and Son was broken. This broke the power of the 2 horns on the ram. Christ is the only way to the Father. When Satan attacked the identity of the Son of God, that access was obscured. All of the angels were affected by Satan's deception. As we quoted in chapter 2,
It was most difficult to make the deceiving power of Satan apparent. His power to deceive increased with practice. If he could not defend himself, he must accuse in order to appear just and righteous, and to make God appear arbitrary and exacting. In secret, he whispered his disaffection to the angels. There was at first no pronounced feeling against God, but the seed had been sown, and the love and confidence of the angels was marred. The sweet communion between them and their God was broken. Every move was watched. Every action was viewed in the light in which Satan had made them see things. Review and Herald, September 7, 1897, paragraphs 3 and 4.
In the symbolism of the 2 horns of the ram being broken, we see that Ellen White states that the sweet communion between God and the angels was broken. All of the angels were unconsciously viewing God through the lens that Satan had created for them, and they became agitated and uncertain of what was right and wrong. God intervened by assembling all the angels and explaining to them the true relation of his Son to himself.
The King of the universe summoned the heavenly hosts before him, that in their presence he might set forth the true position of his Son and show the relation he sustained to all created beings. The Son of God shared the Father's throne, and the glory of the eternal, self-existent One encircled both. About the throne gathered the holy angels, a vast, unnumbered throng, 10,000 times 10,000, and thousands of thousands, Revelation 5:11, the most exalted angels, as ministers and subjects, rejoicing in the light that fell upon them from the presence of the deity. Before the assembled inhabitants of heaven, the King declared that none but Christ, the only begotten of God, could fully enter into his purposes, and to him it was committed to execute the mighty counsels of his will. The Son of God had wrought the Father's will in the creation of all the hosts of heaven, and to him, as well as to God, their homage and allegiance were due. Christ was still to exercise divine power in the creation of the earth and its inhabitants. But in all this he would not seek power or exaltation for himself contrary to God's plan, but would exalt the Father's glory and execute his purposes of beneficence and love. Patriarchs and Prophets, page 36.2.
This event broke the strength of Satan's power over the angels. Even Satan himself was subdued, and his heart went out in love to the Father and the Son.
The angels joyfully acknowledged the supremacy of Christ, and prostrating themselves before him, poured out their love and adoration. Lucifer bowed with them, but in his heart there was a strange, fierce conflict. Truth, justice, and loyalty were struggling against envy and jealousy. The influence of the holy angels seemed for a time to carry him with them. As songs of praise ascended in melodious strains, swelled by thousands of glad voices, the spirit of evil seemed vanquished. Unutterable love thrilled his entire being. His soul went out, in harmony with the sinless worshippers, in love to the Father and the Son. Patriarchs and Prophets, page 36.3.
But soon after this, Satan's pride returned. The four other lies which Satan had spread under his main objective of obscuring the identity of the Son of God became more visible and began to grow. These lies are connected to the Pentagon of Lies.
Footnote 6. See the book Escaping the Pentagon of Lies, available from MaranathaMedia.com.
We notice that the goat developed 5 horns because a little horn came forth from one of the other 4.
Therefore the male goat grew very great. But when he became strong, the large horn was broken, and in place of it 4 notable ones came up toward the 4 winds of heaven. And out of one of them came a little horn, which grew exceedingly great toward the south, toward the east, and toward the glorious land. Daniel 8, verses 8 and 9, NKJV.
This makes the 4 horns on the goat fit the pattern of 3 plus 1. For example, there are 4 metals described in Daniel 2, but the 4th metal is different because it eventually becomes mixed with clay. In Daniel 7, 4 beasts are described, but the 4th beast was different from the others.
After this I saw in the night visions, and behold, a 4th beast, dreadful and terrible, exceedingly strong. It had huge iron teeth. It was devouring, breaking in pieces, and trampling the residue with its feet. It was different from all the beasts that were before it, and it had 10 horns. Daniel 7:7 NKJV.
Again, there were 4 men who accused Job, but the 4th one was different from the others. He came later, and also is not addressed by the Lord at the end. We even see this pattern in the earthly sanctuary buildings. There were 4 temples built, but the 4th one was different. 1. Moses' sanctuary. 2nd, Solomon's temple. 3rd, Zerubbabel's temple. 4th, Herod's temple, a replacing of the previous temple, and was financially supported by Rome. This pattern even reaches to the 4 Gospels. There are the 3 Synoptic Gospels and the Gospel of John, which is different from the other 3. Of course, this opens many doors into different subjects, but we now return to the war in heaven. Satan, in denying that Jesus was begotten of the Father and that Satan owed his life to him, developed the lie that the angels were inherently immortal.
Little by little, Lucifer came to indulge the desire for self-exaltation. The scripture says, "Thine heart was lifted up because of thy beauty, thou hast corrupted thy wisdom by reason of thy brightness." Ezekiel 28:17. Thou hast said in thine heart, I will exalt my throne above the stars of God, I will be like the Most High. Isaiah 14:13-14. Though all his glory was from God, this mighty angel came to regard it as pertaining to himself. Patriarchs and Prophets, page 35.2. The high honors conferred upon Lucifer were not appreciated as God's special gift, and therefore called forth no gratitude to his Creator. He gloried in his brightness and exaltation, and aspired to be equal with God. Patriarchs and Prophets, page 37.
The denial of Jesus being the begotten Son led Satan naturally to assume that his life came from himself. This lie of inherent life led to an inevitable war on the law of God.
Satan was warring against the law of God because ambitious to exalt himself and unwilling to submit to the authority of God's Son, heaven's great commander. He claimed that angels needed no law, but should be left free to follow their own will, which would ever guide them right. Spirit of Prophecy, Volume 1, page 22.
The law is a transcript of God's character. As all created beings owed their life to God, the law was an expression of liberty and freedom, ensuring connection to God. Through the lie of inherent life that meant connection to God wasn't required to live, Satan presented the law as arbitrary and restrictive.
God requires perfection of his children. His law is a transcript of his own character, and it is the standard of all character. Christ's Object Lessons, page 315.1. The law of love being the foundation of the government of God, the happiness of all intelligent beings depends upon their perfect accord with its great principles of righteousness. Patriarchs and Prophets, page 34.3. The Son of God presented before him the greatness, the goodness, and the justice of the Creator, and the sacred, unchanging nature of his law. God himself had established the order of heaven, and in departing from it, Lucifer would dishonor his Maker and bring ruin upon himself. Patriarchs and Prophets, page 35.3.
From these events, we can see the four key elements making up the four horns of the goat. First, lying by obscuring the fact Christ is begotten. 2. Lying that life is inherent. 3rd, lying that the law is unnecessary. 4th, lying that God is arbitrary and controlling in character. These four horns stand in the place of Satan's original lie concerning the Son of God. The first lie continues as manifested in these four. These stem from Satan's enmity for Christ and his desire to murder him. Satan had held almost half the angels through his lies.
Satan exultingly pointed to his sympathizers, comprising nearly 1/2 of all the angels, and exclaimed, "These are with me." Spirit of Prophecy, Volume 1, page 22.2.
After God had made clear the position of his Son, many of Satan's sympathizers were inclined to return to God. In order to secure his angels, Satan introduced another lie related to the law of God.
Many of Satan's sympathizers were inclined to heed the counsel of the loyal angels and repent of their dissatisfaction and be again received to the confidence of the Father and his dear Son. The mighty revolter then declared that he was acquainted with God's law and that himself and they also had now gone too far to go back, and he would brave the consequences. For to bow in servile worship to the Son of God he never would, that God would not forgive, and now they must assert their liberty and gain by force the position and authority which was not willingly accorded to them. Spirit of Prophecy, Volume 1, page 20.2.
This led Satan to institute a new theory relating to justice.
In the opening of the great controversy, Satan had declared that the law of God could not be obeyed, that justice was inconsistent with mercy, and that, should the law be broken, it would be impossible for the sinner to be pardoned. Every sin must meet its punishment, urged Satan, and if God should remit the punishment of sin, he would not be a God of truth and justice. Desire of Ages, page 761.4.
And out of one of them came a little horn which grew exceedingly great toward the south, toward the east, and toward the glorious land. Daniel 8, verse 9.
This was a new lie, horn, which grew out of Satan's attack on the law. Satan had originally stated that angelic beings needed no law. Now Satan attacks from a different angle. He claims to uphold the law through his principle of justice, but his ultimate aim is to destroy the law by presenting it in a false light.
The condemning power of Satan would lead him to institute a theory of justice inconsistent with mercy. He claims to be officiating as the voice and power of God, claims that his decisions are justice, are pure and without fault. Thus, he takes his position on the judgment seat and declares that his counsels are infallible. Here his merciless justice comes in, a counterfeit of justice, abhorrent to God. Christ Triumphant, 11.4.
Shall the throne of iniquity, which devises evil by law, have fellowship with you? Psalm 94, verse 20.
Through the lie of false justice, Satan succeeded in taking 1/3 of the heavenly angels with him. They believed that God would not forgive them, and so God was not able to forgive them. They believed Satan, and thus could not believe God. As they judged, they were judged.
And it grew up to the host of heaven. And it cast down some of the host, and some of the stars to the ground, and trampled them. Daniel 8, verse 10. And another sign appeared in heaven. Behold, a great fiery red dragon having 7 heads and 10 horns, and 7 diadems on his heads. His tail drew 1/3 of the stars of heaven and threw them to the earth. Revelation 12:3-4.
In taking 1/3 of the angels, the power of this lie made the little horn exceeding great. This horn grew even greater when the human race fell. Human nature became infused with the principles of lies or horns of the goat. 1. Enmity towards the Son of God. Genesis 3 verse 12. 2. Believing we would not surely die. Genesis 3 verse 4. 3. The carnal mind is enmity against the law of God. Romans 8 verse 7. 4th, God is arbitrary, punishing, and controlling. Genesis 3 verses 17-19. 5. Coming out of point 3. Justice of the law demands death for transgression. John 19 verse 7. It is important to note that when Satan planned to overthrow the human race, he hesitated. He trembled and wavered as to whether he should do this.
He shuddered at the thought of plunging the holy happy pair into the misery and remorse he was himself enduring. He seemed in a state of indecision, at one time firm and determined, then hesitating and wavering. His angels were seeking him, their leader, to acquaint him with their decision. They will unite with Satan in his plans, and with him bear the responsibility and share the consequences. Satan cast off his feelings of despair and weakness, and as their leader, fortified himself to brave out the matter and do all in his power to defy the authority of God and his Son. Spirit of Prophecy, Volume 1, page 32.
We are told that the fallen angels said they would unite with Satan to overthrow the human race. The 4 horns may therefore represent not only the lies which Satan told, but key angels who were his military generals in the war against God and his Son. It is interesting to note that in 2 Samuel 21, verses 15-22, we are given a list of 4 giants besides Goliath who were overcome by David and his men.
These 4 Philistines were descendants of the giants of Gath, but David and his warriors killed them. 2 Samuel 21, verse 22. NLT.
Is it possible that Satan was seeking to duplicate the throne of God where 4 living creatures stood before the throne? Is there a connection between Satan's 4 generals and the 4 winds which seek to blow upon the earth? See Revelation 7 verses 1-3, Zechariah 6 verses 1-8. And is there a connection between 4 potential generals and the 4 different kingdoms that are described in Daniel 7 as 4 beasts? These 4 beasts are referred to as 4 kings.
Those great beasts, which are 4 kings which arise out of the earth. Daniel 7:17.
Within the history of these 4 beasts, many individual earthly kings ruled on the throne, but in the invisible realm were there 4 individuals, like the Prince of Persia, guiding these kings and kingdoms. These are things for further study, but the principle is that the 5 key lies of Satan, which establish his power, are carried by himself and 4 other key fallen angels. The condition of Satan and the fallen angels was not reversible. They believed the lie that God would not forgive. This was a lie against his character. They sinned in the light of the knowledge of God's character, but man was in a different position.
But even as a sinner, man was in a different position from that of Satan. Lucifer in heaven had sinned in the light of God's glory. To him, as to no other created being, was given a revelation of God's love. Understanding the character of God, knowing his goodness, Satan chose to follow his own selfish, independent will. This choice was final. There was no more that God could do to save him. But man was deceived. His mind was darkened by Satan's sophistry. The height and depth of the love of God he did not know. For him there was hope in a knowledge of God's love. By beholding his character, he might be drawn back to God. Desire of Ages, page 761.5.
The mercy extended to man in giving him probation enabled Satan to activate his principles of mercy through the punishment of death. Satan had stated that every sin must be punished. He convinced the human race that in order for forgiveness to be obtained, one equal with God would have to die to satisfy the demands of the law. As we read above, this separation of justice from mercy was abhorrent to God. The word abhorrent in Webster's dictionary carries the meaning to abominate. Therefore, the lie of justice demanding death is at the heart of the abomination or transgression that makes desolate. Through this little horn of false justice, Satan was enabled to magnify himself to the prince of the host. Daniel 8 verse 11. To give a summary of this process in heaven, I quote from the book Key to Empowering the Third Angel's Message. 1. A rejection of the begotten Son, who inherited all things. 2. Which led to a rejection of life as a gift. 3. Which led to the theory of inherent immortality. 4. Which led to the theory that angels did not need laws to govern them. 5. Which made God's law appear arbitrary. 6. Which caused Satan to declare that mercy was inconsistent with justice because beings of inherent wisdom do not need mercy. They have sufficient wisdom to guide them. 7. Which made God appear that he could not be just and forgiving. 8. Which led Satan to tell the angels that God would not forgive. 9. Which led Satan to state that every sin must be punished. 10. Which led to the idea that justice demands death. 11. Which means God's government is founded on force, not love. 12th. Which opened the door for the principle of sacrificial atonement or penal substitution for transgression. Key to Empowering the Third Angel's Message, page 13. In order to fully reconcile things in heaven and earth, see Colossians 1 verse 20, this false justice system had to be exposed. The only way to do this was for the sin of Satan against Christ to abound. When Christ was murdered on the cross, Satan revealed his enmity and the place of his sanctuary, his counterfeit theological system or refuge of lies, Isaiah 28 verse 17, of enmity was cast to the ground.
Yea, he magnified himself even to the prince of the host, and from him the daily sacrifice was lifted up, taken away, and the place of his sanctuary was cast down. Daniel 8:11, KJV.
Satan saw that his disguise was torn away. His administration was laid open before the unfallen angels and before the heavenly universe. He had revealed himself as a murderer. By shedding the blood of the Son of God, he had uprooted himself from the sympathies of the heavenly beings. Henceforth his work was restricted. Whatever attitude he might assume, he could no longer await the angels as they came from the heavenly courts, and before them accuse Christ's brethren of being clothed with the garments of blackness and the defilement of sin. The last link of sympathy between Satan and the heavenly world was broken. Desire of Ages, page 761.2.
The magnification of the little horn against the prince of the host is a reference to the death of Christ on the cross.
Prince of the host. Daniel 8, verse 25, speaks of this same power standing up against the Prince of Princes. The reference is to Christ, who was crucified under the authority of Rome. See on Daniel 9, verse 25. Daniel 11, verse 22. SDA Bible Commentary on Daniel 8, verse 11.
Satan's enmity was revealed in the lifting up of Christ on the cross, John 3, verse 14. But this cast down his sanctuary, his refuge of lies, to the ground. This secured the heavenly angels. They saw the enmity of Satan fully revealed, and all sympathy for him was ended. But the human race was still controlled by this lie of false justice. The belief in the need for Christ to shed his blood to satisfy justice is at the heart of the enmity of Satan against him. This is why Christ came to cause sacrifice and oblation to cease. See Daniel 9 verse 27. He came to reveal the Father's character as one full of mercy, without the demand for death. But in order to remove this enmity from our hearts, Christ had to be given a body containing this enmity, and in that body slay the enmity.